Although there's currently a clear favorite to win the Heisman Trophy, there are 10 to 15 players that are still in the running and have a legitimate chance of winning the award this season. We've had players come and go from my top 10 all year, but we're starting to get a better understanding of which players are legitimate contenders. Today, we're going to be looking at my Heisman top 10 after 6 weeks of the college football season. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'll be posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. We'll kick off today's video at number 10 with Clemson quarterback DJ Uiagalelei. After a disastrous 2021 season, Uiagalelei has quietly turned into one of the more underrated quarterbacks in all of college football. Through 6 games this season, he's thrown for 1,500 yards with 14 passing touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. He's also added over 300 yards on the ground with 3 rushing scores as well. Clemson is currently undefeated, and it looks like they're going to be a playoff threat. Plus, Uiagalelei continues to put up solid numbers on a week-to-week basis. This past weekend against Boston College, he threw for over 200 yards with 3 passing touchdowns, while adding 70 yards on the ground. The previous week, in a ranked matchup against NC State, he threw for 200 yards with a passing touchdown, while adding 70 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. Looking at these numbers, it truly is incredible just how much he's turned things around. In 13 games last season, he threw for only 2,200 yards and had only 9 passing touchdowns with 10 interceptions. If they had a Comeback Player of the Year award in college football, Uiagalelei would probably be the favorite to win it. Blake Quorum continues to be the top running back on my list, as he's rushed for over 700 yards with 11 rushing touchdowns this season. In 2021, he had 11 rushing touchdowns in 12 games. In only 6 games, he's already matched that number. He's also nearly matched his rushing total from last season, as he's just a few hundred yards short. Through the first month of the season, Quorum is number 1 in the Big Ten in rushing touchdowns and number 2 in the entire country. He's also number 2 in the Big Ten in rushing yards and number 3 in the country as well. He had another solid showing this past weekend, as he rushed for 125 yards and a rushing touchdown against Indiana. Quorum now has a rushing touchdown in every game this season and has rushed for at least 125 yards in 3 consecutive games. I actually have Bryce Young slipping all the way to number 7, but that's just because I'm unsure about the significance of his injury. If he doesn't miss any time, then I think he's going to be just fine. But if he misses a couple games, I think it's really going to hurt his Heisman chances. In 5 games this season, he's thrown for 1,200 yards with 14 passing touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He's also added 150 yards on the ground with 3 rushing scores. He missed this past weekend against Texas A&M, and we saw just how badly Alabama missed him. Plus, in his previous game against Arkansas, he completed only 7 to 13 passes and did have an interception. Bryce Young is still one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football, and I'm sure he's going to return at some point and light up the stat sheet. But as of right now, it just seems really difficult for him to have any edge over a lot of these other players we're going to mention. It only took 5 seasons, but Dorian Thompson Robinson is having the best season of his career. He's completing 75% of his passes and has thrown for over 1,500 yards. He also has 15 passing touchdowns with only 2 interceptions. On the ground, DTR has added 230 yards with 4 rushing scores. Currently, Thompson Robinson is first in the Pac-12 in completion percentage and is second in the entire country. He's also first in the Pac-12, averaging 9.3 yards per pass attempt. His 19 touchdowns responsible for are second in the Pac-12 and 6th in the entire country. After a fantastic showing 2 weeks ago against Washington, in which he totaled nearly 400 yards with 4 total touchdowns, DTR responded with an even better game. This past week, in an upset win against Utah, he completed 80% of his passes for 300 yards with 4 passing touchdowns, while also adding a touchdown on the ground as well. UCLA is currently undefeated on the season and knocking on the door of being a top 10 team in the country. If they continue to win and actually make a playoff push, Dorian Thompson Robinson will have a legitimate Heisman case. Speaking of players finally having the best season of their career in year 5, we have Kansas State quarterback Adrian Martinez. So far this season, he's thrown for 900 yards with 4 passing touchdowns, but what he's done on the ground is truly incredible. He's rushed for 550 yards with 9 rushing touchdowns. He had some incredible performances against Oklahoma and Texas Tech, so his showing this past weekend against Iowa State wasn't as impressive as in previous weeks. Still, it was a solid performance all around. Martinez threw for 250 yards with a passing touchdown while adding 80 yards on the ground, and he even caught a pass for 11 yards. Last week, Bo Nix was at number 10 in my list, and I have a feeling he's going to continue to climb in my rankings. Bo Nix has been fantastic this season for the Ducks. He's completing a career-high 70% of his passes with 1,500 yards. He's thrown 12 passing touchdowns and has only 3 interceptions. Meanwhile, on the ground, Bo Nix has rushed for over 330 yards, averaging more than 8 yards a carry. He also has 8 rushing touchdowns on the season. Bo Nix actually leads the entire Pac-12 in rushing touchdowns and is number 7 in the entire country. Even better, his 20 total touchdowns responsible for are the 5th most in the entire nation. The time has finally come where Bo Nix is a true Heisman contender. This past week on the road at Arizona, he completed 20 of 25 passes for 260 yards. He also rushed for 70 yards and had 3 rushing scores. Bo Nix turning into one of the better quarterbacks in all of college football is certainly something I wasn't expecting. Actually, if we're being honest with ourselves, it's something that I totally was expecting. If he keeps this up and Oregon keeps winning games, Bo Nix, the legend himself, might be a Heisman finalist. Entering our top 10 for the first time all season is TCU quarterback Max Duggan. Through 5 games for the Horned Frogs, Duggan is completing 73% of his passes for 1,300 yards. He's thrown 14 passing touchdowns with only 1 interception. On the ground, he's averaging more than 6 yards a carry with over 200 yards and 3 rushing scores. Duggan is currently number 1 in the Big 12 and number 2 in the entire country, averaging 10.3 passing yards per attempt. Although he's played in one less game than a lot of other teams, he leads the conference in passing touchdowns. He's also number 2 in the Big 12 with 17 touchdowns responsible for. After a slow start to the season, Duggan has really shown out the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, in an upset win against Oklahoma, he threw for 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns, while adding 115 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. Then, this past weekend, in another upset victory on the road at Kansas, he threw for 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns again, while adding 55 yards on the ground with a rushing score. TCU is undefeated, and they're making a run in the Big 12, along with the college football playoff potentially. Duggan has been lighting up the stat sheet, and he might finish with some of the best numbers among all quarterbacks in the entire country. Sliding down to number 3 is Caleb Williams, who's still putting up some really solid numbers, but I still think there are a few players that have been slightly better. In 6 games, he's completing 65% of his passes for 1,600 yards. He's thrown 14 passing touchdowns and has only 1 interception. On the ground, he's rushed for just under 200 yards with 3 rushing scores. This past weekend against Washington State, he completed only 15 passes, the lowest of the entire season. His completion percentage of 51% was the second lowest. He threw for only 188 yards, which was nearly his fewest in a game this season. Again, Caleb Williams is putting up some solid numbers, and he's probably going to finish the season with a really impressive line. But based on how he's looked against some decent competition, I still want to pump the brakes just a little with him. Moving up now to number 2 is Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker. In 5 games this season, he's completing 70% of his passes for over 1,400 yards. He's thrown 10 touchdowns and has 0 interceptions. Meanwhile, on the ground, he's rushed for 230 yards with 3 rushing scores. Hooker is number 1 in the SEC and number 3 in the country in 10.2 passing yards per attempt. His passing efficiency rating of 179.5 is number 1 in the SEC and number 7 in the entire country. Currently, Tennessee is undefeated and they're making a serious run in the SEC. Hooker has been fantastic for the Vols this season, and he has a chance to help his Heisman case this weekend as Tennessee takes on Alabama at home. Staying at number 1 though is Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud, who's been the best quarterback in college football this season, and there isn't a close second. In 6 games, he's completing 71% of his passes. He's thrown for over 1,700 yards with 24 passing touchdowns. This past weekend on the road to Michigan State, Stroud completed 21 of 26 passes for 360 yards and 6 passing touchdowns. This now makes 3 games this season in which Stroud has thrown for at least 5 touchdown passes. He also has 3 games this season where he's thrown for at least 350 yards. Like I mentioned, CJ Stroud is the current favorite at this point, and barring a collapse on his end, it's tough to see him not winning winning the award. But that's the beauty of college football. All it takes is one bad game and a bad loss to completely change the Heisman race. So, although I think CJ Stroud is the favorite and is likely going to win the award, I still think that there is a lot of competition that could potentially knock him off, barring some craziness happening during the rest of the season. But that's my current top 10 for players I have in the Heisman race. Was there a player that was ranked too high, or was there a player that was ranked too low, or was there a player that I didn't even mention that you think should have cracked the list? Whoever you think it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you love college football, then this is definitely the place for you. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm posting college football videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe if you call yourself a college football fan. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.